Alright, how's it going, everyone? Let's get into this. Grab yourself some tea right now, or if you're like me, late at night, it's like 2:30 in the morning. Have a monster to get you through it. Let's we're on ProRevenge, and let's read what we can get. I have my dog chewing on a bone, which is not very helpful, but hey, it is what it is. Simon pissed me off. I just wanted to get him fired. A sparkle. Okay, we're looking for that good one. Don't want to do your chores, son? Well, have fun being stuck at home. That sounds tame. Mike finds a way to get rid of problem employee. Ooh, that sounds good. The revenge wasn't mine, but I figured I'd share it as I witnessed it to the beginning. Certain names and details changed to protect the guilty. Background. Years ago, I worked for a large bank in the UK. We all worked on the same floor and in the same department, but within different teams. I was just passing through on a secondment and saw the beginning of this revenge, but was filled in on the aftermath later. One of the teams was run by a woman called Sarah. Sarah was, by many measures, a good manager, but she had a blind spot. The blind spot was a woman called Helen. Now, when I was in my previous role, I interacted with Helen a fair bit, and she seemed friendly. But when I came to actually working with her, she was a nightmare. She'd tattle, steal ideas and credit, and generally throw you under the bus at any opportunity. I'm not sure why Sarah always protected her, but it soon became a sore point for most of the people on the floor who had to deal with her. Enter Mike, who was the manager of a smaller team. Mike could be a bit of a dick, but was still professional and fun to work with. To give you an idea of his character, I found out I was being made redundant, and even though he wasn't my manager, he heard about it and booked time out to help me with my CV and do interview practice. Shortly after, it was announced that Mike's smaller team was being dissolved and the staff either made redundant or moved to other teams. At the time of the cuts, the economy in the UK was in a bad state, and all the banks were looking for efficiency. He was redeployed and took the vacant manager role under Sarah that Helen had been gunning for. To make matters worse, Helen now reported directly to him. Helen was furious and spent no time in making her discontent known, as she felt she was entitled to the promotion. Unfortunately for her, Mike was wise to her. They'd both joined the company around the same time, and so he knew exactly what she was like. He'd even had her blame him for her mistakes before. Shit, even the projects she'd gotten so much praise for had been work one of his staff had done. So, he started the process of documenting her poor work and attitude to manage her out of the business. Sarah, however, would not allow it. Helen was a high performer in her eyes, and she wouldn't sign off on him getting rid of her. When I left the team, Mike was frustrated with her and wasn't sure what to do. The revenge. I met up with Mike a year later, and he shared how he'd solved the Helen problem with me because he knew all the issues I had with her. Because Sarah had his hands tied, because Sarah had his hands tied, only other option was to get Helen out of the team. Was for her to leave of her own accord. I couldn't oust her by making her life difficult, or she'd go to Sarah. So he went the other way. The mother fricker sat through every performance meeting with her for the rest of the year, gritting his teeth and praising her. That then justified him giving her a really high performance rating. He also used his own contacts to find roles in other teams at his grade that he then talked up to Helen. These roles were specifically selected because they specialized in one of the things Helen claimed she was an expert at, but had very little real experience in. Basically, roles where he knew she'd have the highest chance of shooting the bed. Eventually, she applied for one, and he spent several weeks coaching her for the interview in the company at the time. The interviews were scored off of three main factors: performance rating, current role, competency-based interview results, and relevant experience. He'd done everything he could to make her shine in all three. She took the promotion and within 2 months had quit the bank. He knew she wasn't ready for the responsibility, didn't have the skills, and her poor work ethic would be exposed. Worst case, she'd get her sit together and he'd look like the perfect manager to Sarah. TLDR. Upon finding out he couldn't fire the problem employee, manager gets her promotion to a team where she'll either get fired or quit. Oh, that's a good one. That is a very good one. So, oh, hell, that's been there the entire time. Alright. So, that is some good stuff right there. Let's just say that. That was good. Oh, that was really good. You want me to take your collar off? Okay. There you go. Alright. So, let's see what else we got. Keep screwing over your group members. This teacher is tired of her. TLDR. A group of seniors spend all year fricking over their classmates, so I, the teacher, wrecked their final semester. This is my first post here, and for reasons that will soon become obvious, this channel speaks to the depths of my soul. It's also a very long one because I want you to delight in my destruction. The particular flavor of this revenge comes from the fact that everything that goes down is a result of a domino effect that leaves devastation in its wake. Dedication. This story is for anyone who has ever been fricked over in a group project, and I certainly hope you enjoy it. Some details are deliberately vague because, duh, and I don't feel like getting sued. No, skip to the setup if you're in dire need of an immediate justice boner. My backstory, not super necessary, but will give you insight into my logic. Alright, so I've been teaching for many years, but it's important to understand that in my first year of teaching, I got put on blast by an elite group of EP and EK, entitled parents and entitled kids. Not a week went by without someone either demanding my job, trying to undermine me, or just calling me a piece of shit. I nearly quit halfway through the first semester. The verbal and emotional abuse was so bad. This was at a school in a tough area, so I was accused of racism constantly for asking kids to stop talking. Was ripped into for giving failing grades for missing work, and even enforcing the rules in the student parent handbook got me in hot water. My principal reprimanded me for being a negative influence on the school, and was I told that I needed to let more rules slide because he was tired of hearing from parents. I would have parents just show up unannounced to sit in all my lessons, and then tell me I was a city educator, a bad human being, etc. I have plenty of horror stories from that school alone, but the point I'm making is Here we go. I would have parents just show up unannounced and sit in on my lessons and tell me I was a city educator, a bad human being, etc. I have plenty of horror stories from that school alone, but the point I want to make is that this experience defined the kind of teacher I became going forward to my next school. I needed to be that person who was untouchable because I needed to focus on one job that mattered: teaching kids. My next school was in a fairly affluent area. It wasn't uncommon for me to find out that my students' parents made millions, which brought its own unique set of problems. However, my new principal was super supportive of me as long as I followed the school's handbook to the letter, because by doing so, I was in line with the school's